This week we're looking at the prefix trans, which means across or through. We get this prefix from Latin. You will recognize almost all, if not all, of these words. Our first one is transfer, to move something from one place to another. I have to transfer my grading papers from my school to the house. Next we have transpired. This is the past tense form of the verb, ed, but it also has a root that ends in e, so we don't double that. Notice I put a box around the root, spire. Trans is the prefix. We don't double the s in trans and spire. They share an s, but this means something that has occurred or happened. Next we have transform. So you recognize the word formed. It means to change the shape of something from one thing to another. A caterpillar can transform into a butterfly. And then we take transform. We add the shun ending, make it into a noun, transformation. The transformation was astounding. Transplant means literally to take a plant and move it from one place to another. Like I have to transplant the young plants into larger pots. It also can apply to things other than plants, like, and it can be used as a verb, as in transplant a plant, but it also can be used as a noun. She is a recent transplant from California and is therefore having a hard time dealing with all the rain. A person who has moved from one place to another. And then we have transcribe. You've had the verb, or the root scribe already. If you remember, it means to write or something that is written. So if we take it literally, to write across, but it means to make a copy of something. Fourth graders, you've learned in Bible about scribes whose whole job was to transcribe the Bible, make copies from one paper to another. Also, from the same script root, we have transcript, which is just a noun form. Your transcript is also your official school record that follows you from place to place. Particularly when you get to high school and college, it's the list of all the grades that you have had. A transcription, then, is something that is written. Notice again, it has that script root in it, but the trans and the script share an s, we don't double it, and the script and the shun share a t instead of doubling it. Then we have transit, which is like a form of transportation. Transition, a change from one thing to another. The weather will transition from freezing weather to warm and rainy weather. Transact, we haven't got to act yet, we'll look at it later this year, but it is to do, because you think if someone acts, they do something. So when you transact, you do something. And then we have transaction, something that is done. Often it means having to do with money or business, a transaction between the buyer and the seller. Transport, port means to carry, so when you transport something, you carry it across or from one place to another. And then we're going to add the shun and make it a noun form, transportation, something that carries people from one place to another. Transmit means like to broadcast, like they will transmit the song over the radio. And its noun form is transmission here because here we have s instead of t, making the shun sound. Transgression, the same shun ending with sion, is something that is done against somebody or something such as a sin or a wrongdoing. Transpose, if you transpose letters in a word, you get them in backwards order. Transparent, something you can see through, not related to the root that we get parent, as in your parents, from. Transcend is to rise above something, not generally meant like physically to rise above, like we don't say the sun transcends the sky, but more like someone can transcend their social status, or they can transcend a certain behavior to rise above it. And then we have two challenge words. The first one, transmogrify. If you've ever read Calvin and Hobbes, that's where I first encountered this word. And I actually thought it was a made-up word because it just looked so cool and goofy. But it means, it's related to transform in meaning, to change from one form to another, but it specifically means to change to a very funny or very grotesque form. So again, if you've ever read Calvin and Hobbes, he makes his transmogrifier to change himself into something else. If you haven't read that, you should go look it up. It's hilarious. And lastly, transcontinental. You see the root continent in there. You know what a continent is. So something that is transcontinental crosses a continent. And you will most often hear this used to describe the Transcontinental Railroad, the first railroad tracks to cross the entire North American continent. So in history you might learn things like covered wagons became less and less used after the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. People could cross the continent on a train much more quickly. So there are your words for this week.